Sweet. Nate and Brian back at it.
We're back at it, ladies and gentlemen. Episode
Yeah,
35.
sweet. We still got to get episode 34 out there.
Hey,
my my partner over here is a little slow, a little slow at things.
Yeah, I'm all the social media. It's okay. I'll get it. That's actually my goal for this weekend. All the
Yep.
remaining episodes we've recorded are going to be put up this weekend.
There you go.
Spaced out on release.
There you go.
But
Mastering the process, we have to teach ourselves these things. It's not like this shit comes natural. We got to figure it out.
yeah, dude, I'm a Neanderthal. Like I told my wife the other day. I was like, how do I open this? And she's like, really? And I'm like, yeah, I don't want to destroy it.
Yeah. By all means, I'm still figuring a lot of that shit out.
Uh, but yeah, man, we are going to be talking about mindset and the difference, maybe different practices we use to change our thoughts, being consistent, like we just talked about with our episode, and then or kind of how to change your outlook on life.
Absolutely. Change your perception. Change your thoughts, change your life.
So, I mean, I know, just like we talk about, I feel like your mindset, just like a spiritual journey, it kind of goes hand in hand. To me, I think it's a daily practice.
Mhm.
But do you have any opening thoughts about your recent experiences with mindset, sir?
Yeah, it's a daily discipline, right? I mean, I've been working on my mindset, I'd say, for several years now. I mean, I don't know, probably since 2017 when I really started to kind of shift and you know start to look at life differently, diving into Wayne Dyer's work and Ram Dass's work and different things. It started to like change my perception on life. But man, if you're not consistent with it, if it's not a daily practice, just like getting to the gym, um, it won't stick, right? And so it's like that's one thing I realized with myself is I've been very disciplined physically, and then been disciplined for the most part with like my meditation practice, but consistently catching my thoughts when they want to take a shit has been the thing where I've faltered on, right? I've allowed old thinking habits and patterns to come back and leave and come back and leave. And I would say even in the last couple of weeks, I had this wake up one morning like 2 a.m. realizing like the only person that's ever held you back is you. It's no one else's fault. Doesn't matter what you've been through. The only thing that's ever held you back from reaching your fullest potential is you. And it's been because of being inconsistent, right? And so now like having my mind locked in on, which I still have to work on every day, every moment, but myself locked in on like, look, these are the visions and the dreams you have, and the only way you're going to get there is taking consistent action every single moment of every single day, even when you don't want to. We were talking about it off camera. You have a shit day, you have multiple challenges come at you. Oh, but hey, I need to go get my journaling done. I need to go write out my vision again. I need to go meditate. I need to go get my workout in. You don't veer from what you know you need to do, because all of those small wins accumulate and over time will lead to the life you want, right? And like we've talked about many times, we believe it's God, the universe, whatever you want to say, refining us to prepare us for those things we've been asking for. So the desires we have, the life we see that we want to live, all of us are capable of living that life. It's just, are you willing to play the long game and discipline yourself on the days you don't want to? Right? And you're going to have a lot of those days because life's going to throw shit at you. Or if you have a family, if you have young kids, if you have a partner, and then if you have a job while you're also working at your dream, are you going to allow the fact that I'm tired, there's family things going on, I have an issue with my partner, are you going to allow that shit to veer you off of path because of your lack of discipline, right? So you discipline the mind, and then again, you're just consistent with your practices, despite what anyone or anything tries to throw at you. And that takes practice, just like working a muscle. Working the mind is the same thing. 100% same thing. And I would beg to say even more important. Yes, move your body. It's highly important because it does help the mind. but like consistently working on your mind and replacing thoughts when you have a thought that isn't serving you, like replacing that every moment of every day creates a new neural pathway, and then that becomes your normal way of being, right? But like a lot of our old thinking has been built for a lot of us most of our life. And then especially when you've experienced traumatic events that really stuck into your brain and stuck into the subconscious and said, "Oh shit, if this happens again, like I'm going to protect you." But you know those protective mechanisms are not actually serving you. Oftentimes they're hindering you from your growth because that will lead you to fear, fear of experiencing something, fear of trying something again because you had a bad experience, right? So it's consistently every day replacing your thoughts with what you want. So not giving attention to the current reality that you live in, which is what most of us do, right? So like for instance, if someone looks at their bank account and says, "I don't like how much money I have in there." Well, you don't feed energy to that. You don't feed thoughts to that. You say, "I'm headed this direction and I'm going to be a fucking billionaire before you know it." And you honestly start embodying that feeling now, and you believe it and you speak it every day with a conviction that that's already a done deal, right? And over time, with discipline and consistency, you're going to get there.
Yeah, man. I think you know, as we presented, I've been thinking. I've been thinking about outlook, and I've been thinking about the comparison between how I was years ago to how I am now. I'm still not perfect because we're human. We're still going to have those goofy thoughts that come into our mind. But I would say for me, like when I was younger in the military, I used to have more of a pessimistic view of the world outlook, a little more black and white, a little more good and evil kind of thing. And then as I went through life and eventually got out, like the last 5 years has really, I've gone through some things within myself that's really changed my outlook on the world. And I think that one thing I said it before, but I think one of the biggest things that helps me is when I tell myself like how much of a blessing it is to be able to complain about the things I once prayed for.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So like like we were talking about a little bit off camera, like people think you get rich and famous, you'll have less problems. No, you'll have more.
You'll
But
have
I
larger
think
problems.
yeah, exactly. So I think for me, I think you're right. It is that daily practice throughout the day to like we talked about before, stewarding your thoughts. Like for me, a lot of it is work, and I'm like, oh, it's really, then I'm like freaking out about something internally, and then I pause and I'm like, think about where you are, think about where you were. It's not that bad, dude. You know what I mean? Um, for me, as far as like what practices do I do? Uh, I talk to God all day, every day. That's 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 my main thing, and I know, like I used to think it sounded corny, but I literally am like, what would Jesus do? That's what I say to myself. I don't care what anybody thinks because I'm like, that's who I want to try to model myself to be as, and I'll never be that great at all the time because I'm human. But I'm just like, what course of action should you take, or what thoughts should you have? How do you perceive the situation or scenarios around you? You know, you have. I think discipline and self awareness are key because you know uh, something crazy could be happening, and it's the calm minded person that solves it. Like cool heads prevail. You know what I mean? So for me, a lot of it is definitely prayer. Like today, and we were talking about this a little bit off camera. Today, I did a 24-hour fast from 6 p.m. last night to 6 p.m. tonight. And throughout today, that's kind of like an exercise in stewarding your thoughts and pushing through and looking at things with different perception because I'm like, man, I'm hungry. That's like, no, push forward, keep going. even though I'm just like sitting in a chair looking at a screen. I'm like, nope, I'm not gonna cave to my regular desires on a daily basis. I think that's an important thing too with your thoughts is how much do we knowingly or unknowingly cave into the first desire that comes to our mind.
Absolutely. I mean that goes back to discipline, right? A practice I use with that is I will write out what do I still need to work on? But there's always going to be things, right? There's still going to always be things that you need to hone in on. But I write things down daily of areas that I still catch myself lacking that discipline, right? Even in the most minor thoughts, we talked about reactivity. It's very powerful. A very powerful practice is that when something challenges you from the outside, say your partner comes at you, um, if you can pause and not react, you give yourself a moment to say, what is this showing me about me? Right? Not that they don't have their thing to work on, because everybody does, but you look at yourself and say, so like when you feel for a moment like I really want to respond and I want to lash back, what inside of you is causing you to get into a defense mode? There's something about you that needs to be resolved, right? Because a person that's sound with themselves and sound with their thinking won't feel any reason to defend if they haven't, if they haven't done anything in that moment, in that present moment. What do you have to defend? So then you can realize and become aware of the fact that that's something from old that you're still defending in the present moment, right? So that's a practice I use is I journal things out and I write down like a list of what I still areas I still find myself faltering. Another thing I do is at night I evaluate the day, right? How was your day? What were your wins? Where could you have been better? And it kind of goes back to what you were saying, where you look at yourself and you say, like, man, who you are today compared to even a year ago is completely different. I do the same thing. And I feel like that's a really good practice because you stack the wins of being able to look at it and say, who was I 1 year ago? Like, holy shit, I've changed immensely, right? Or the opposing to that is you look at yourself and be like, I've been the same fucking person 5 years ago to who I am today. And then you know you still have a whole lot of work to do, right? But if you can see the changes and kind of write those things down as well, that reminds you that you have been making progress. And like we talked about, this is a marathon, right? This isn't a sprint. So I tell people, even for us, like wanting to get to success, whatever that is for people, it's like building a business, for instance, right? You better be planning on looking at decades, not months, of when you're going to get there, because you don't know how long it'll take. It could take you 5 years and you have this beautiful business built. It could take you 10. You could be 15, 17 years in, and all of a sudden you finally get to a place where you're like, wow, look what I've done. But it's that discipline and consistency of saying, like, I have a vision, I have a dream, even just of mastering yourself. I have a vision of who I can be, and I'm gonna stick to it. And even when you get there, the game's not over, right? You get to a point where it's like, hey, I reached this. Now what can I do to level myself up even more? Right?
Yeah, I think that as you were talking, the thing that came to my mind was um, it's hard. It's hard. It is hard. I'm not going to say because we're talking about being consistent. It's hard when you have life happening. It's hard, but it's also your mind. So um, one practice that I do or I attempt to do, it's not always successful, but it's successful for more times than it's not, is to kind of let go, like let it go. Like especially when you have like negative thoughts and you're starting to like, oh well, this is like this because of this, and this is this, and it's like just long. It's like this long drawn out thought that you've just had of all the reasons why something's negative and happening. It's like kind of like what you said and what we've talked about already is I think there's an aspect with our human thoughts that is maybe somewhat deceptively designed around control. And so, what for me the best way to kind of surrender that control is like let it go. You don't have control. That's like you were talking about. It might take you 10, 20 years to build a successful business. So don't hang on to the negative thoughts. Let it go. You're not in control of every little thing that's happening. So,
Absolutely.
so to me, that's something I try to practice on a daily basis. I'm not always successful at it. Sometimes it takes until the next morning for me to be like, all right, new day, let's go. But
Yeah.
it's that daily consistency of not controlling your thoughts, but stewarding them to the point where if you have your first thought and you do what's the first thing on your mind, sometimes it's not always the best answer, depending on what state you're in. So
Absolutely.
I think that, but for me, um, that's where things kind of start to speed up in the sense of joy. Is like, hey, number one, things aren't all that bad. I'm still on this path, or whatever path I'm meant to be on will show itself.
Hmm.
And I'm not in control of much but myself. That's it.
That's beautiful, man, for sure. Because that's so that's great that you. I'm actually really happy you brought that up because yeah, the sense of surrender, right? So letting go. Every day, I do believe that there is a part of that that we need to do because at the end of the day, so I think about like I was kind of telling you about my vision the other day. I don't have an idea of like the how, the when, all the details will come together. God's already orchestrating all of that and will put all of the people, places, and things and resources that need to be there in play when I'm ready to receive them, right? So, what's my job? Work on myself, work on my mindset, become a better vessel to receive these gifts that I've been asking for, right? But I also understand that those external things I have no control over. I do have control over my daily practices, my daily thinking, and how I'm preparing myself to receive these things. But at the end of the day, the heavy lifting, I'm not doing, right? We think we are. We'll be like, man, look at all the work and all the things I did over the years. Yeah, you took steps. You're absolutely correct. But if you look at your life and you see the way shit came together synchronistically, you weren't the one that made that happen. There's no way in hell you could have put this person here at this perfect time. You got stuck at this light or in this accident and you got to this place at this time to meet this person. Like, yeah, you didn't do that. And so there's always something on a deeper level happening that we don't see. And you can look back if you're present enough and connect all the dots and be like, whoa, that was crazy. Just to the letting go, just for a tool for people because we are trying to give you guys value and tools you can use. There's a book by Dr. David Hawkins called Letting Go. I've read that book probably 4 or 5 times, and I promise you, as you read that book, the first time you'll get something out of it, and then you reread it again and again, and like I swear you'll get epiphany after epiphany, and he teaches you how to let go of holding on to everything. Basically, it teaches you how to let go of holding on to everything that's out of your control, right? Because there's so many things that we don't control. And like you said, I would say it's a human predicament is that we think we control everything. And I've heard many people of my spiritual mentors say they're like, it's an illusion. You don't control everything that you think you do, right? And like you said too, the thing I've also realized is like, so you have a vision for life. If you're consistently working on yourself and shifting yourself, even if that vision isn't where you're supposed to go, the vision that God or the universe has for you is going to be so much better. It's going to be so much better and you're going to feel so much more fulfilled, right? So that's the part of surrender again is you don't hold on to an outcome. And I know we've talked about this before, is surrendering to the outcome, right? You can see yourself from the end. I tell people when I teach visualization, see yourself from the end goal. Like you're already there, you're already standing on stage with the trophy in your hand, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, don't hold on to that so tightly because if you're not supposed to be there, you won't be there. And it's not a big deal because there's something greater for you if you don't get to that place.
Yeah, I would say it's what fascinates me is how, like, when you start to actually become self-aware of what we've been talking about, it's very it's kind of fascinating to me how intricate yet simple it is.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like there's things that I'm like, where did this come from? And you're working on something on such a deeper level, like something as simple as like anxiety, for example. Like I feel like a lot of like changing our mindset. I think a lot of folks, and we've discussed this before, is that there's a big fear aspect of it. Like, oh, what if this
Mhm.
doesn't work out? What if the bank doesn't give me the loan, or what if no customers come, or blah blah. I think a part of it, a key aspect of changing your mindset, is to all these practices that we're talking about can be implemented to help you not live a fear-based life, because that's ultimately kind of what we've been programmed for.
Mhm. That's how we're easily manipulated and controlled, right? Is through fear, shame, and guilt. And I tell people you don't need to have fear, shame, and guilt. If you quote unquote sin, miss the mark, then you figure out how to come at it from a different angle and not do that again, right? And sometimes that takes falling on your face many, many times, but you never give up or stop moving forward in the direction you want to go because of fear, like you said. I think most people do that, right? You experience something, you didn't like the outcome, and then they give up. They're like, I don't want to try that again because I had a really bad experience, right? That's okay because I'm going to come at it from a different angle and I'm going to try with even more effort and even more. And I don't mean effort as in, like you have to push things. You don't have to push things, but you do have to be consistently trying to be better at whatever it is you're trying to achieve and reach, right? So there's a healthy balance between like taking steps, putting in effort, and not trying to force an outcome, right? Because again, David Hawkins wrote another book, Power versus Force, and he explains in there how true power is, yes, you take steps, you do things, you head in that direction, but if you're trying to force it, you're automatically causing a counter force. It's all energy, right? And so, um, yeah, one thing I wanted to touch on, you mentioned earlier, you said that it's hard, and you and I were talking about perception of life, right? I always tell people when people tell me something's hard, I'm like, that's a perception. You can say this may
Mhm.
be challenging, but I can fucking do it because nothing's impossible for me. That's the way I look at life, right? And whether that's true or not, I don't know, but I tell myself nothing's impossible for me. So I'm not going to have the idea that this is going to be hard to get to. Even like I said when I shared my vision with you, it's a big vision, but am I going to tell myself, "Wow, that's going to be really hard to get to?" No, because then I'm already self-defeating and limiting myself. But if I look at it and say that shit's possible, I don't know how, I don't know when, but I know if I become better and better, there's a hell of a better chance of me getting there than there's not, right? Because I mean, a
It's
lot of people,
interesting.
it's like they won't even take the chance to get there because again of fear. I'm like, fuck it, take the chance and fail again and again and again, but keep going.
What's interesting about that you said that is that as soon as you said it, the thought came to my mind. I'm like, it's kind of like what you and I have talked about before about worrying about stuff. It's never as bad as it
Hmm.
seems. That's the same thing with difficulty. It's never as hard as you think it is. It's just your mind.
Yep.
So you're right. You're right. It can be challenging, but yeah, I agree with you. You can do all things with God, all things with your own
Yeah.
alignment with the creator. I definitely, yeah, that's true. Because everything I've ever worried about or everything I've ever thought was hard at first, everything seems hard. But when you actually start practicing and doing what it is you are driven to do, you'll look back and you'll be like, oh, that really was not that hard.
Hmm. It's the
So,
story we create behind it, right? It's the story that we create. I tell people you get a thought about something that seems that you have fear in, right? Fear around. And then your mind will automatically give you many, many other thoughts to reinforce that story. So that's why I don't tell myself this is going to be hard. I'm like, I may look at something and be like, I have no fucking clue how I'm going to get there. But if I'm present and I just take steps in blind faith, the answers will appear, which also goes back to, like you said, the calm mind is the one that will find the answer. Well, if you're sound and you're, which meditation helps with, is slowing the mind down, right? And you're present when a challenge comes, A, that challenge is there to help you to try to grow you. And B, the answer will oftentimes appear very quickly. And it's not always what you think it is, right? That's the other thing I've realized when they say God works in mysterious ways. So, like, the answer will come from, hey, you may need to ask this person for this money to start this business. And then what happens there? You're fearful of asking the person because you create a story about what they might tell you and what the outcome of that's going to be. When instead, if you feel that and you're like, let me ask this person, it doesn't matter what the outcome is. That's a possibility of it being the answer for your prayer, for your ask, right? And that's what I've looked at too. Is I always tell God, I don't know what the answers are, and I don't know how this is going to work. But when you give me an idea, I'm gonna try it, even if I feel like I'm gonna look stupid or a person's gonna say no or whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm confident enough to be like, oh well, like let me just let myself look stupid because I have a vision for my life and I'm gonna use whatever means God gives me to get there. And it's not always gonna be traditional ways that we think it is. So.
Dude, that's exactly where I was going with it. I was I was literally the I think one of the biggest speed bumps we put in our own way is comparison.
Mm,
We're like, oh well, this guy did it in 2 years. How come it's taken me 10? I'm not good at this, or clearly I'm not good enough. You know what I mean? I think that's another thing that's important to try to avoid or learn how to overcome is comparing yourself to others, because your journey through life is your journey.
mhm,
So we talked about on Monday, our job is to lift each other up, but that also includes ourselves. So how can we lift others when we ourselves are putting ourselves down? You know what I mean? So it's like, because I've been there before. I'm like, oh well, this person got there in this amount of time. It's taken me longer. I don't feel like you're putting. It's like that fear based again. You're putting that fear of, oh no, I'm behind everyone else, when you're exactly where you need to be.
mhm. And oftentimes you don't even know the true story behind it. I was just talking with somebody earlier and we were saying, you people will base things off of like Instagram posts. And I'm like, do you know, number one, that those people are only showing you the outcome, if they're even being honest, number like in the first place. Um, but they're just showing you the outcome, but they're not showing the years and years of work and effort and discipline it took to get to that space, right? And so even like you're saying, okay, somebody got somewhere, it looks like they got there in 2 years. There was a whole lot of other shit that had to happen before they got to that place. You know what I mean? And oftentimes they're just not sharing the story. I think that's why it's one of the most effective things we can do is be authentic and say, hey, this is what I've had to do for the last 10, 15, 20 years, whatever it is, to shift me and who I am to get to the place that I'm at now. It's taken a lot of fucking work, failure, and consistent effort to get to this place.
Well, that's kind of what, earlier I said, compared to 5 years ago, I'm a completely different person. But when I really think about it, in reality, it took me my entire life,
Yeah.
all 33 years to get to this point where I'm at now. Because
Mhm.
at least 15 years, because if you count the time I was in the army, like it took me
Mhm.
15 years to learn all this stuff, because all this I wouldn't I wouldn't have experienced these things to teach me these things unless I went through what I had gone through.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So it's a very I I really like that you said that, because to me, I'm comparing myself to like a year ago, when sometimes I really sit and think, and I'm like, it took me this long, but that's okay. But it's okay,
Exactly.
you know.
Well, it's like when I say that I really started diving deep in 2017. I've been doing stuff prior to that, but not to the depth that I went to in 2017. But when I look at myself today, like I told you, I've had more epiphanies in the last month than I have in almost 10 years of like trying to work on shit and listen to things and read books and meditate. And I'm like, in the last month I've had more epiphanies and more truths handed to me where I'm like, shit, like seeing the truth as to why I'm not where I think I should be. But again, like you say, we're always right where we should be. but at the same time, you can also look at places where you held yourself back, and you're like, probably could have had a little bit more progress on who I am and who I've been had I been paying closer attention.
See,
You
and
know,
that's where the quote unquote acceleration takes place. Once you start to become, once you start stewarding your thoughts, implementing practices to change your thoughts for the better, not comparing yourselves to others and focusing on your own yourself, I think that's where that acceleration happens to where, it doesn't matter if it took you 10, 20 years, but you notice it, but see, you're self-aware enough to realize like, oh, I've been doing this for a long time, but this year has been much more eye-opening. You know what I mean? So because
way more transfer.
you're in that state of working on it consistently to be able to see that.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm self-aware enough to see like, oh my God, like this last year has been way more transformational for me than any other year. And every day I see it getting better. But it's now because like I said, in the last month, I've realized some things where I'm like, wow, your discipline and consistency, if you like now that you're just on it and you're not going to veer from it, is going to get you to a much better place and a place that you've always wanted to be at. But that didn't come until the last month, and I've been studying this stuff and working on these things for since, like I said, since probably the very beginning of 2017. So this is 2026, I'm almost 10 years in. But I think about we've talked a lot about Wayne Dyer. Wayne Dyer, when I watched a couple of his last talks, like he died at 75, and with those talks were when he was 75. There was things he said in those talks. He goes, I just learned this the last 3 months of his life at 75, and he was a teacher teaching this stuff and studying this stuff for a lifetime, and he literally was still learning things. That's why I say it's a never ending journey, never ending.
Well, that's why we say it's a marathon.
Yep.
You're in it for the long haul. You have to endure. So all the
Hmm.
little speed bumps you have in life, all the little setbacks, the difference between, I don't want to say, well, I'll just say winning and losing because I don't really believe in loss in the traditional sense that if you endure, you will be successful.
100%. And you know what's something I started to tell myself is, you know, I don't understand honestly why we fear things because you're not getting out of this fucking thing alive. So why not go for everything you possibly can and live the life of your dreams, or at least try to get there and try to be your best version? Because you're not getting out alive. So why are people holding themselves back in fear? Guess what? You're gonna die at some point anyway, so you may as well fucking give it your all in this life, you know?
Well, that's the great illusion is that when we're young, we think we have all the time in the world, and then all of a sudden you're in your 30s, 40s, whatever, and you look back and you're like, "Uh-oh, I'm on the other half now." you know?
Yep.
So I think in a way we kind of trick ourselves. And that goes back again to changing your mindset.
So think about it. Everything is mental, right? It all starts with our mind. It all starts with our mind and our mindset, and then everything else will follow. I train people. Obviously, I do physical training and coaching with people, and I tell people all the time, I'm like, your biggest battle isn't going to be to lose this weight. It's going to be to change this. I was like, because you've created the habit to get you to where you are, or habits to get you to where you are. Now you have to recreate all of it in your head, and your body's going to follow. So your biggest battle is going to be every single day that you get up and you're like, the bed's warm, my comfy pillow. Yeah, I don't give a shit. I'm getting up. I have an appointment at 5:30 in the morning. It's time to work. You see what I'm saying? You know, I'm tired. Yeah, good. You need to evaluate your day at the end of the day, get that little meditation and visualization in, and then go to bed, right? And then do it all over again. And that's the part where people fail. And we talked about this a little bit, but we live in a society that's instant gratification, right? So they want everything now. So I'll be working with people whether it's on their mind or their body or both, and well, shit, I've been doing this for 6 months, and yeah, I see some change, but I don't see. You're not going to be where you want to be in 6 months. It took you however many years to get to where you are right now. Now it's going to take you time to get to the new place. And the thing, like I told you before, though, and we talked about was if you just have that awakening in your mind where like I can change the way I look at life and the way I look at myself right now, and you commit to it, the internal shift is automatic. It's like in that moment, right? Now it will take time to get the external stuff to catch up, but you can shift the internal immediately. Like I tell somebody, you want to be wealthy, then feel wealthy now, right? I don't care if you have $5 in the bank. Feel wealthy right now and embody that. Walk around with that confidence because remember, everything is energy. So if the energy you're giving off is I'm freaking rocking and rolling right now, I'm right where I want to be. What do you think the universe is going to do? It's going to conspire to put everything in order to get you to that life, right? But we have the society that says, I will feel good when I get this thing. I will feel love when I meet this person. Why don't you feel good and feel joy and feel love right now? Embody those things, become those things. That's naturally going to make you want to be a better version of you anyway. And then you will attract all the external things that you've desired.
Well, I
But
think that
that's
I
also
think
not
that
going to happen instantly.
no, yeah, I agree with you, and I think that that also relates to letting go. Like you use the analogy of, well, it's been 6 months, and I don't see a lot of changes in my looks when exercising. That's because, like we said earlier, it's not as hard to do something once you look back and like, oh, I did that, right?
Mhm.
But that's a part of letting go. Is like you said, letting go of habits, thoughts. You're basically you're you're basically cleaning the slate and starting with a new foundation. So yes, that's going to take time, but that's okay because now instead of starting with nothing, you're starting with experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the thing is, right, with that experience, if you didn't know what you didn't want, how would you know what you want? How would you have a clear picture and a clear vision of what you want? How would you know what your desire is, whether it's a job, a career, a business, if you hadn't experienced having a job, a career, a business you didn't want? How would you know clearly what you want in a relationship if you haven't had shitty relationships? How would you know you want to be wealthy if you've never been broke,
Yeah.
right? So you have to experience both sides. That's the law of polarity, right? You got to experience one side to be able to know what your desires are for the other. And that just gives you the fuel to want to get to the other, right? So it gives you more energy when you know I don't want this. So that gives you more energy to put into I want this. And that should give you the drive to never give up.
Well, that a good example of that is Morgan Freeman actually, because
Yeah.
he actually made a very good point. This was a long time ago, but he was like, I used to want to be a pilot. And then once I started to learn and practice and start to try to become a pilot, I realized I liked the idea of becoming a pilot, but not, I didn't like, once I found out, once he experienced what it took, he was like, oh, this isn't for me. And
Hmm.
that's how life works, dude. You try something, if you like it, then okay. If you don't, find something else. It's okay to
Absolutely.
fail sometimes. You know what I mean?
It's okay to fail all the time. And I'm like, man, you know what? If you have a like that example, it's a great example. If you have something you want to try it. If it doesn't work out, that's okay. You learned something from it and you grew from that experience and you became more clear on the vision for your life, right? As opposed to if you don't try anything, you're completely lost and you don't have a fucking clue what you want to do, right? So I'm like, try as much shit as you can and fail and then become very clear on the vision of who you want to be and the life you want to have.
Well, it reminds me of that quote. It's better to love and have lost than to not have loved at all.
100%. Yep. That's a great thing to just to touch on quickly because relationships seem to be one of the most challenging things for people. And then so you have a bad relationship or a series of bad relationships, and all of a sudden you get people that are like, I don't want to do a relationship anymore because it's challenging, it's whatever. I'm like, but if internally, which I say all, maybe not all, but a lot of humans want love, and then well, I think all humans want love, but a lot of humans want love like in a relationship setting, right? And so I tell people like take what you learned from the series of not great relationships, and then now you have a clear picture of what you want from a relationship. Then at that point, you will use more discernment, you'll be more patient, and you will allow for that partner that you actually deserve to show up, right? But then you also get to see what you need to work on with yourself to be able to align with that partner.
Yeah, I think we might have to record another episode on this, but as it relates to relationships, maybe because it goes back, it directly correlates with what we're talking about. Really, if you think about it, everything in life correlates. This isn't just like, oh, is this about being an electrician or college or whatever? This is applicable to anything and everything in life.
Absolutely.
This is life. We're talking about life, right?
Every facet of life. Yep.
Well, any
100%.
closing thoughts, sir?
I just want to encourage everybody just to really, something you can do to kind of get started is sit down and get a notepad and write down what you've experienced in life and that you weren't a fan of, that didn't give you the life that you wanted. Look at what you learned from it, write that down as well. And then on a clean page, take as much time as you need to write down a vision of a life that you would love to have, right? You can sit in a meditation or a prayer, or if you don't do any of that, just send it out to the universe and let it go, as we were talking about, letting go. And then just decide what steps can I start taking toward that? How can I start improving myself today? What small step can I take? I want to be healthier. Can I go for a 20-minute walk? I want my mind to be quieter. I don't want to worry so much. Can I sit in a 5-minute meditation? Um, you know, what can you do today to start making a change to take you toward that vision you just wrote down? And I promise you, with consistency and discipline, and you allowing and patience, allowing the divine to orchestrate everything in its own time, but you just stick with it and never give up, you will start to see incremental change that will give you the energy and the motivation to keep going.
Yeah, I think one of the key aspects, I mean, all three are key, but I think the one that stuck out to me the most is patience. I would say to people, be patient with yourself.
Mhm.
Be patient with your circumstances. Your circumstances don't dictate how you react. And that's kind of the whole point of this episode.
Mhm.
You're not in control of a lot of things, but you are in control of how you conduct yourself. I'll say that.
And how you react to things. Yep. Be patient. Patience is key. Stick with what you're doing. Life will get better. Sending everybody much love from my heart.
Everybody have a great evening, and we will catch you in the next one.